Fourth Avenue to Tech would drive. O'Leary to Key. It's WreckTalk.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And I can't believe I'm saying this. We're inside 50 days of watching some college football. That's right. I'm excited. There's some huge week one games. I don't ever think we've opened up a season with this many stellar matchups week one. You've got LSU, Clemson, Battle of the Tigers, Battle of the Death Valleys, Miami, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Colorado, what was it, North Carolina, TCU. That's only going to be surprising or entertaining because you've got Bill Belichick. But anyways, we're going to do a power ranking here, so we're not looking at schedule or really any nuance other than who do you think are the best teams in the ACC. Now, I did this last year every week. And every week we have tiers. The only one that changes is the doo-doo tier. This preseason's doo-doo tier will be the 2024 FSU season. Really hard to be worse than that. To be worse at something than that season, you would have to actively try and be skilled at being bad. So is what it is. Now we have national title contender, ACC championship contender. Obviously, I think that there are teams that are good enough to win the ACC that are not good enough to win a national title. Don't think this is controversial. The other ones are relatively self-explanatory, right? Above average, power forward team, average, and bad. Before we get into it tonight, if you have early access, in other words, if you were an idiot like me and spent $100 on the game, you get it 3 days early. If you did that, I think the game releases at noon for you. Squid and I will be playing that game tonight, 8 or 9 o'clock, somewhere around there. I'm not exactly sure yet, but come check that out. With that being said, let's get into it. We'll start with Virginia. Now, Tony Elliott has been basically a complete disaster there. I'd have to look. I mean, the last time they made a bowl, have they made a bowl under him? Last year, Virginia went 3-5 in the ACC, 5-7 overall. They started off all right. I think they ended up. Did all three of those wins come before the second half of the season? I think they did. But look, this is most likely going to be Tony Elliott's last year. Not recruiting well, not bringing people in the portal class. In fact, there was an article in ESPN showing you kind of the insides of what it's like for an athlete to go through the portal. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. Clayton Powell-Lee, evidently Virginia needs defensive backs. Throw a bunch of money at Clayton Powell-Lee, and academics is the reason he didn't go. Only like 60 credit hours would transfer over. He would end up losing like 2 years of school. He said he didn't want to do that. He'll finish his career at Georgia Tech. So interesting that it came down to academics. So, Virginia, though, might be the worst team in the ACC, in my opinion, coming into next year. Now, if you're a Virginia fan, you probably have reasons. Look, we got this guy coming in. We got that guy coming in. Hopefully they prove me wrong. Boston College. I think, and tell me what you think in the comments, I think Boston College is the hardest team in the ACC to predict for next year. Last year, they went 4-4 in the ACC, 7-6 overall. They had losses to Virginia, Virginia Tech, SMU, and Louisville. And aside from the Virginia loss, like all the other losses are, quote unquote, respectable. Shouldn't be losing to Virginia. Got the most out of Castellanos, Castafulu, whatever his name is. He ended up being a fumble machine, though. They bench him, and then he says, well, you can't bench me if I quit, and goes to Florida State. Now, we'll talk about Castellanos more when we talk about Florida State, but Boston College is going to be a better team without him. You just cannot turn over the ball as many times as he did and win football games. It's a miracle that it's a miracle they won as many games as they did with him. Now, I think Bill O'Brien is a hell of a coach. I think he's done a fantastic job since he's come in. Like Boston College, not only making a bowl, but being a game north of it with 7, I think is respectable. I could see them winning 8 or 9 games this year. I haven't looked at their schedule, admittedly, and I could see them going like 3-9. I have no idea what to expect from Boston College, but I do think they're an average Power 4 team. By the way, these will number 1 through 17 by the end. So like on the road they're on, they're in a specific order. Cal went what? 2-6 in the ACC, 6-7 overall. How do you go how do you only win 2 games in the ACC and make a bowl? Their out of conference must have been a joke. Or they had some big wins out of conference. But look, I know Cal had a really good defense last year. Problem is they have no offense. Almost come back and beat, or not almost come back. They almost beat Miami. They let Miami come back from like a 27-point deficit. I think Cal has a ton of problems. What's their coach's name? Justin Wilcox or something like that. Admittedly, I don't know much about Cal. This will be their second year in the ACC, but I don't think they're a good team. I don't think that they make a bowl this year, truth be told. Clemson. Anyone has Clemson as their favorite to win the ACC. A lot of people have them making a deep playoff run. Some people think they're have a good chance of winning a national title. Now, why is that? They probably return more talent than anyone in the country this year. They have a Heisman Trophy candidate, and whenever I record a video, I can't remember people's names, but they got probably the best quarterback in the ACC with the most experience. He'll be in a running for the Heisman. They bring in a new DC who hopefully will solve some of their issues. They at times had trouble stopping the run last year. Now Clemson 7-1 last year in the conference, 10-4 overall. They end up winning the conference. Their only ACC loss to Louisville. Their other loss coming to Georgia. I do think they're a national title contending team, though. Going to be very interesting to see what happens when Clemson comes to Atlanta next year. As a Tech fan, week 3 game, that's going to tell me probably what kind of team Tech has. If they're not able to be competitive with Clemson, hosting them at home, not going to be a good look for them. Also, Pigskin Pete coming down to stay with Rec for that game. Should be interesting. Duke. Shout out to Duke. Duke has their entire team decimated. Elko hired away, their head coach. Their DC was hired by Georgia Tech, who ended up leaving after 1 year. Massive exodus in the portal. They lose generational quarterback for them, who goes to Notre Dame, and shout out to Notre Dame for making every great ACC quarterback look mid as hell. But Duke won 9 games last year. Duke went 9-4 overall, 5-3 in the conference, with their only losses in conference coming to Georgia Tech, SMU, and Miami, who were all good teams in the ACC. Manny Diaz is doing something special. They bring in a kid from Texas who ends up transferring out along with their backup, but they do bring in a really good quarterback from Tulane. Manny Diaz is one of the top defensive minds in the country. No one had them winning 9 games last year. Haven't seen their schedule this year. I think they're one of the better teams in the conference, though. As much as it surprises me, Duke got something going. I do think they're better than Boston College, so we'll put them in front of Boston College. We'll go ahead and get Florida State out of the way. Florida State's probably, like Boston College, a really difficult team to gauge right now. They only won 1 ACC game, and that was against Cal. They went 2-10 overall. So they only beat 1 Power 4 team. Florida State was awful last year, made a complete fool of themselves. Now, they are feeling themselves a little bit. See what happened in the courtroom? No. Yeah, and you're still in the ACC now. Now, you do bring out, you wipe your entire staff, except for the one that I think is the problem, and Mike Norvell. Bring in Gus Malzahn, whoever you bring in as DC. But here's the thing with Florida State. What did they tell us last year? Oh, Alex Adkins doesn't matter. Mike Norvell is the offensive genius. But why did that come up? Because Alex Adkins was suspended for the first 3 games of last year. Well, now you must admit, if you're high on Gus Malzahn, that Mike Norvell doesn't know what he's doing offensively. doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks, doesn't know how to call offense. That's why he's bringing in Gus Malzahn, right? Does Mike Norvell have a losing record at Florida State? Now, look, they're going to say, look, we're loaded with talent. We got all this talent all over the field, yada, yada, yada. You did last year too, and you won 2 games. There's never been a team in the history of college football that's probably underperformed their talent as much as FSU did last year. There's problems, in my opinion, with their program far beyond what's going on the field. And I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I can't explain 2 wins last year. Also, you get rid of Alex Adkins, which was kind of the heart of your team player-wise, right? I mean, he was a Florida State guy, played at Florida State, was supposed to be your guy, your Florida State guy. You have to get rid of him. Florida State doesn't care about playing football, though. All Florida State cares about is getting in the courtroom, refreshing, lawsuit pages. I think Florida State is gonna struggle this year too. I really do. The best I can do for Florida State, I feel like I'm on Pawn Stars. Best I can do is bad Power 4 team. You're going to have to prove me wrong this year. You don't get to go 2-10 and then me tell you that you're competing for the conference or something this year. Get out of here. Georgia Tech. A lot of people are going to probably say Georgia Tech's an ACC championship contender, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with them. Here's the thing with Georgia Tech. They bring in a new DC, a DC who was a part of a very successful program in defense last year at Texas, and Blake Gideon. He's never been a DC before, though. So you don't know what you're getting with him. He's never called plays, never been in the he's never been the guy. Also, Georgia Tech loses every guy who played any meaningful snaps on the defensive line 2 and 3 deep. They lose like 8 or 9 guys off that defensive line. The only one coming back is Jordan Vandenberg. And you're not bringing anyone in that clearly shows you, hey, this guy's going to step up and be ultra productive for you. There's no way I can say Georgia Tech is an ACC championship contender until they prove to me that they have fixed the defensive line issue, or not issues, but they've brought in sufficient replacements for what they're losing on the defensive line. I can't see that they have up to now. So they also lose Eric Singleton Jr. to Auburn, who was like the top wide receiver in the portal, but they bring in like the second best guy in the portal in Eric Rivers. They bring back Jamal Haynes. They bring back Haynes King. But you lose 3 of your 5 starters off that offensive line. So I do think Georgia Tech's a good team, but they're going to have to prove to me on the field, probably, week 3 with Clemson, that they're an ACC championship contender. And obviously you need to take care of Colorado. I seem to think that they will, but it's really hard to talk to a Colorado fan because they have some sort of mental illness called delusion. Louisville's a team I don't know a ton about, but their coach has got them going. He took over, made an ACC title appearance in his first year. Now, last year they go 5-3 in the conference, 9-4. They lose to Notre Dame, SMU, Miami, and Stanford. So they do have an embarrassing loss to Stanford, but they did go to Death Valley and beat Clemson last year. So this is a team that's talented, that has a good coaching staff, that has the ability to beat really good teams. I would say Louisville's an above average team. And as of right now, I'm going to put them ahead of Georgia Tech. Respect to what Louisville's doing over there. I don't know a ton about Louisville. NC State. NC State, what did they do last year? Do I have them on here? I should. Anyways, they went 6-6 last year, 6-7. They had to beat North Carolina to make a goal, or to make a bowl, which is the easiest thing to do in the world. Yeah, they went 3-5 in the conference, 6-7 overall. Inconsistent team last year, kind of up and down, but they do bring back a freshman quarterback that I think is one of the more talented quarterbacks in this conference. I want to say he was a little bit turnover prone last year. I think experience, in another offseason is going to help him. Here's the thing for Dave Doran. This is the year you got to show it. Like, really, NC State has to, I think, win 8 or 9 games at a minimum this year before people start saying, what are we doing with Dave Doran? What are your expectations at NC State? Again, another team I don't know a ton about. Do I think they're a bad Power 4 team? Yeah, I do. But I think they're better than Florida State right now. Pitt, the tale of two halves of a season. Pitt ends up 3-5 in the ACC, 7-6 overall. So they win their first 7 games, lose their last 6 games. Now, Holstein did go down, so they lost a starting quarterback that was really good. Here's the thing, though. Even if you lose your starting quarterback, you should be able to win 1 out of 6 games. Now, I don't know what to think about Pat Narduzzi. He has kind of gone back and forth with his own players at times. But just because you're bringing back what might be a sleeper pick for the best quarterback in the ACC, I'm going to put him as an average Power 4 team right now, but in the top of that bracket. I got him ahead of Duke and Boston College, just below Georgia Tech. SMU. SMU, another hard team for me to pick. They do go undefeated, the only team to go undefeated in the conference last year. They went 11-3 overall. They also had a very easy schedule. Very easy schedule. SMU proved me wrong. There's 2 teams on here that proved me wrong. SMU proved me wrong. Second year in the ACC. They have a much harder schedule this year. I'm going to split the difference and put them between Louisville and Georgia Tech. Is that fair? Team I don't know a ton about other than just looking at their record. I think they bring back their quarterback and all that. I'm just, as a placeholder, going to put them between Louisville and Georgia Tech here. Stanford, not a good team. In fact, I think they're worse than Virginia. They go 2-6 in the conference, 3-9. However, they beat Louisville and Syracuse last year. Another team that's their second year in the conference. Another team that I don't know a ton about, other than they're not good. They're just not good. They care more about Olympic rowing team probably than they do football. Hopefully one day they can turn the tide there, like when Harbaugh was there. Syracuse is a team I kind of have a soft spot for, even though I think their coach is a clown and does clown things. But he did win 10 games last year. Louisville went 10-3, 5-3 in the conference. However, this is a team I do know about because I just did a season prediction for them, lose everything that made their team special last year. And I mean everything. They lose their quarterback, McCord. They lose their top 3 wide receivers, one of which the portal. They lose their top 6 tacklers off defense. And there's nothing that they can show me that they're even coming close to replacing the production. They have to replace like 9,000 yards of offense. It's just not going to happen. I think they're an average team, and they might murder me for this, but I'm going to put them between Duke and Boston College in the average Power 4 team. And I think that could be generous. I do have them going 5-7 in my season prediction. Maybe they prove me wrong. North Carolina. This is going to be the most controversial thing I say in this video. I think they're going to be the worst team in the ACC this year. I do. I mean, to not troll, I should put them probably above Virginia and Stanford. But I think Bill Belichick's going to be an absolute disaster. I think he's already proven to be somewhat of a disaster. There are people that were placing bets on whether he would ever even coach a game at North Carolina. He has a girlfriend that is 30 years, not 30, like 50, 80 years younger than him, 120 years younger than him. He's old enough to be her grandfather. And she is running his life. the Hard Knocks show was going to come to North Carolina, which would have been great for them because all I hear is about brand recognition and getting our brand out. And North Carolina's at a crossroads right now. They cannot get it together football-wise, particularly defensively. And why didn't that happen? Because Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordon Hudson, demanded to have like carte blanche control of it. Have you ever heard anything remotely like that happening from a head coach's wife? Do me a favor. Name the wife of the team you root for as head coach. Like if you're an NC State fan, tell me what Dave Doran's wife's name is. I'm as diehard of a Georgia Tech fan as anyone's ever going to find. I could not tell you Brent Key's wife's name. I wouldn't, if she knocked on the door right now and I opened it, I would have no idea what she looks like. Have no idea that she just knocked on my door. This is a massive problem. It's going to be a massive problem all throughout this season. And beyond that, just because you're a good coach in the NFL does not mean you're going to be a good coach in college. I mean, in fact, there's only a few people that have ever gone to college to the NFL and been successful in the long term. There's only one that's gone back and forth and been successful, and that's Harbaugh. What makes North Carolina think Bill Belichick's going to be any different? Especially when you have he's pussy whipped by this girlfriend that's on staff, on emails, on internal emails that of which some she's leaked. This is going to be an absolute disaster. To not 100% troll, I'll put them as the third worst team in the conference. North Carolina would do better to listen to me. I tried to tell them about Jeff Collins at DC. They didn't listen. And now they're re-upping on round 2 of Stupidsville. Miami. I'm torn between putting Miami as an ACC championship contender and a national title contender. I'm going to put them as an ACC championship contender, and I think that's clear. They're either the most talented or second most talented team in the conference, and this is not debatable. Them and Clemson are the two most talented teams in the conference. They lose the number 1 overall pick in the draft in Cam Ward, a guy that had a historic season for them. Now, he also pissed down their throats in a bowl game, but whatever. Historic offense, dog shit defense. Now, they do bring in a new DC. They get rid of Guidry. And they do bring in some pieces in the portal along with really good recruiting class. Bring in Carson Beck to replace Cam Ward. Now, Carson Beck is coming off arm injury, so we'll have to see to what degree that affects him. From what everyone says and from what I can tell, it seems to not be an issue. He's been throwing for, months or weeks now. But Miami, for me to put Miami in the national title contender, they've got to show me that their defense is markedly improved this year, and they're going to have to do that on the field. All right. Virginia Tech, this might be controversial too. I'm going to put them at the top of the bad Power 4 teams. I know they beat Georgia Tech last year. I get it, and I could make all sorts of excuses for that, whatever. Virginia Tech and NC State deserve to be near each other because it's the same narrative every single offseason with both those teams. Darlings, dark horses to win the ACC, dark horse playoff. It's going to be great. And what happens every single year? And all of that hype is based on nothing. Nothing. Drones is an average quarterback. The best thing about Virginia Tech last year was a running back named Tootin. Just, if you're a Virginia Tech fan, tell me what's different this year if you think this is your year or that you're winning 8 or 9 games. What's different about this year than any other year since you've entered the ACC? I talked about it on College Football Express, but Brent Pry could be on the hot seat if they struggled to make a bowl this year. I don't know if like they did last year. They went 4-4 in the ACC, 7-6 overall with losses to Miami, Syracuse, Clemson, and Duke. But you go 6-6 this year, I think Brent Pry is in threat of losing his job. How long has he been there now? Like 4 or 5 years. what is the expectation at Virginia Tech right now? Because I can remember a time when Michael Vick was there, when they were in the Big East, and they were national title contending type teams. They haven't been anything like that, since they've entered the ACC. I think they've won the ACC, but they have not had any sort of sustained success in the conference. I'm just not high on Virginia Tech. I don't think they're a very good team. Wake Forest, put them, Virginia, Stanford as one of the worst teams in the ACC. I just realized I've got Cal above in UNC, and I'm totally okay with that. There's not much to talk about with Wake Forest. Lose their head coach or have a new head coach this season. They went 2-6 last year, 4-8, missed a bowl for the second time in a row. They haven't, since Hartman left and went to Notre Dame, they've struggled to win a game, which I hate. Wake Forest is another team that I kind of have a soft spot for, just because Tim Duncan played there, and Tim Duncan's the man, even those football videos. So let's go through our list here. We've got Clemson as the number one team in the conference, and then Miami. I don't think this is controversial. Louisville at 3, SMU at 4, Georgia Tech at 5, Pitt at 6, Duke at 7, Syracuse at 8, Boston College at 9, Virginia Tech at 10, NC State at 11, FSU at 12, Cal at 13, UNC at 14, Virginia at 15, Wake Forest at 16, and we've got Stanford as the worst team in the conference. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's fair? Is SMU shouldn't be that high? Should Pitt be higher? Am I too hard on Virginia Tech and NC State? Am I crazy to think UNC is going to be awful this year? Let me know in the comments. Y'all have a good one.